final inductee in the 2022 Australian Survivor Hall of Fame was by far the most heated spot in the Hall of Fame this year. For the first time in the history of the vote, we actually had a tie. And through a fairly, I want to say complicated yet simple revote and tiebreaker system, our next guest was chosen as the non-player inductee for this year. And he's a man that some people may not have heard of before, but would be extremely familiar with his work. Matt Bronger is one of the few people who has been involved in both the old and new versions of Australian Survivor, having worked as a cameraman on both the original Channel 9 season back in 2002 and the current modern version of Australian Survivor on Channel 10. Now, across both versions of the show, Matt has provided us with some of the most iconic shots on any version of Survivor around the world, and is known for his daredevil antics and balls-to-the-wall skills that help showcase the iconic locations the Australian version has been filmed in, from our very own backyard at Whalers Way in South Australia, as well as various locations, of course, recently in Queensland, right through to the tropical paradises in both Fiji and Samoa. Without Matt's expertise, it's hard to see how any vision could have been possible when it comes to Australian Survivor, and he's forged his own legacy within the franchise that has enabled fans from around the world to see the show they love through his incredible skills behind the camera. Now, as I mentioned, Matt, of course, did tie for this position, but the revote saw him prevail and have his legacy cemented as one of the most important people to be involved in Australian Survivor over its 20-year history. And to accept his induction into the Hall of Fame, it is such an honour to be able to welcome with me right now the one, the only, Mr. Matt Bronger. Matt, first of all, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, mate, thanks for having me, and you flatter me too much. I'm just a cog in a wheel.
You're this guy holds a camera, right? That's it? Nothing more?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be able to chat with you, Matt. Now, as of course I just mentioned there in that introduction, you've been involved in the franchise for nearly 20 years, well, more than 20 years now, basically, of course, of doing this.
And I had hair back then, by the way.
Well, exactly. I've seen pictures. So, you know, you're wearing a hat today to sort of cover that.
Survivor hat, look.
It is. You're fitting in very well with that, like the theme. You're actually the first non-host to be inducted into our non-player category. So, I mean, what does it mean to you to have this honour bestowed upon you being in the Hall of Fame?
Well, it's pretty awesome because it's been a long time I've been doing this, and it's still exciting. Every time I go on this show and we get the call and off we go, mate, it still tingles. I'm as keen now, 20 years later, as I was then. It's really cool. Like, we've just done Samoa, and I had the time of my life. It was unreal. So, and not much has changed. It's still the most amazing game on the planet. I love it. I just love it. It's in my blood, and I can't wait to do more. And they're talking about it now. So I'm very, very excited.
Can you give us a quick rundown of how that initial opportunity came about back in 2001, of course, when they filmed that first season for Channel 9, and how you got the nod to go out and film Survivor in Whalers Way?
Yeah, well, I was shocked because I was a youngster back then, of course, and I put my name forward at Channel 9, and I obviously knew a few people. I had no idea what I was doing back then, but it was actually me and my brother. He was my sounder, and we got the nod. I still, to this day, I don't understand why they picked me, but I suppose you'd be nice to everybody, and you show your wares on these other shows, and they picked me. I still can't believe that I got that go ahead back then, and we had the time of our lives down there. It was so cool.
Obviously renowned for very tough conditions in Whalers Way. Just how tough was it filming that very first season of Australian Survivor?
It was freezing cold and boiling hot. I've never seen so many flies in my life. 1 minute it was like 35 degrees, and the next minute it was freezing cold. So, and unlike some of the current camps, it was spread out, man. So, like the first challenge, we walked, I reckon we walked 5Ks through the scrub, chasing them. And it's not so much that case anymore. The camps are a little bit more confined. Back then, they weren't confined. We hiked, pumped everywhere. It was amazing. So I love that. So I keep pretty fit, and I don't care. I'll run anywhere. I'll chase them anywhere.
Well, one of the most iconic shots from that season, showing that how you would do basically anything, involved a whale that you were filming a challenge, and then the whale sort of showed up. For people who might not be familiar with that, give us a bit of an idea of what happened and what that was like, being next to a giant creature like that just appeared out of nowhere.
Well, it was amazing because they were on top of a cliff that, the cliff would have been 150 metres tall. It was tall, these giant cliffs on Whalers Way, which is an amazing location. And I was tasked with, they were shooting cricket balls off a giant slingshot out into the water, into this giant hoop. And the hoop was 7 metres in diameter. And I was tasked with taking out my underwater camera out there and just filming a few, pre-challenge balls falling in the water. And all of a sudden, I'm kind of sitting back a bit. And I got my shots. This whale turns up. And I found out later there was a pod way at the sea, and it must have been a juvenile, but he came up under the ring, this giant ring, this 7 metre ring, and his head was out the front and his tail was at the back. I don't know why. But this whale came up and his little fin got caught. So I was just there, and I went in and I sort of moved it away, and then he started to chase me.
Wow.
And I was on my back with my camera and I started recording, and I had 45 minutes tape. This thing chased me for 45 minutes. He was just playing with me. I would be on my back. He would be 6 feet away from me, and then he would go under me and I'd film him, and then I would go under him. It was unbelievable. They postponed the challenge. All the talent was sitting on the cliff watching what was going on. And then all of a sudden he just took off. I don't know if it was a he or a she, sorry. But it just, this amazing, like this, and it out to sea. And to this day, I do not even understand what happened there.
Absolutely
so it was pretty exciting.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Amazing.
I probably swum out. It was probably 200 metre offshore. So, and I was probably in 20 metres of water, crystal clear water. And it was really cool. Really cool.
Not something I could imagine.
One of the highlights of my career.
I was going to say, not something you probably could have imagined that when you got the gig that you'd be swimming next to a creature like that.
Yeah. It was really cool.
When you got that call then 2016 to go and do the modern version of Survivor, of course, when it turned to Channel 10, was that a simple case of clicking your fingers, yes, send me out there right now, I'm ready to go?
Beside myself. And, mate, it's funny how I just slotted straight back in. I knew what was going on because it hadn't changed. It's like the reality style of it and what they do in the camps has not changed. The challenges and stuff are bigger and better and, more. But, my favourite challenges are still hold your hand above your head with a coconut, So the reality side, the human interaction of what is happening on that beach has not changed since we did it originally, I don't think. And it doesn't change year on, year out. It's reading people. It's watching how they interact. To me, I love that's the aspect I love the most. I love being on those beaches and watching how they react to rain. Because you got to understand, if it rains, we get wet. They get wet. There's no pampering on this show. That's what I love about it. It is what it is. It's right there, balls and all, on the ground. It's great. That's what I love.
To the name of the word Survivor, still to this day.
Oh, totally. They're freezing cold. They're boiling hot. There's, on the original series, we used to call them the dirt people because they were just filthy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they don't get pampered anymore in the current one. They might, they get fed a little bit, but it's they still you watch the current series that's about to happen, mate. They lost so much weight. There's no changes. That's what I love about this show. Don't reinvent the wheel. It just works, I think.
Love that comparison and that way of looking at it. I mean, with all that in mind, though, as a cameraman, what are the most challenging things you've found over the 20 years you've been involved in this show?
It's for me, I'm a little bit different, as in, you know, the ADHD kicks in, and I just love it every day. So, but it is a gruel. It's a grueling thing. Like 8 weeks, you're up early, you're doing 12-hour days. It's hard work. Like the recent one we did, it was a 15-minute walk in with gear. Mm. Put on top of that is an hour's drive there on a bumpy track. So, you know, it's a grind. It's a dead set grind every day of the week. But me personally, I wake up and smile and go, wow, what can happen today? And then you might be wet all day. You might be cold all day. Doesn't matter. There's no protection from the elements. We don't sit under bloody, a nice little awning. We get wet as well. So you got to make sure your camera gear works. And like I'm an ex-camera technician, so I would fix 3 or 4 pieces of equipment from all the boys every single day of the week. So, you know, shit breaks down. You just got to make it work, and we make it work. So it's great.
You mentioned not a lot has changed in the game across the 20 years, but in terms of being back there in the original to today, in terms of how the game has developed, the strategy, everything along those lines, if you had to choose between old school Survivor 20 years ago versus the more fast-paced modern version today, which would you choose?
Oh, God, that's a tough question because I love them both. I love both. And, that's a tough question. I love the original because it was so raw. I mean, we did it. I think there was only one or 2 series of American Survivor had gone to air.
Yeah.
And we were flying blind when we did the first one. My God. But the current ones, I can't split them. To be perfectly honest, I can't split them because it's just as exciting to me now as it was then. Like we just did, was it last year? Oh, Jesus, COVID, all that. We did Cloncurry and Charters Towers. Oh my God, that was so exciting to go in the Australian outback, and it was so different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Snakes, and you know, I think we would have seen 5 snakes a day. You don't see that on the show, but there was brown snakes everywhere. There was crap everywhere. It was so cool. So, you know, I can't split the two. It was fun then. It's fun now. So, you know what I mean?
You answered one of my questions when I was going to say, do you still enjoy being part of it? Of course, you've answered that. But I mean, I've got to ask one final question, Jaden, Matt, and something probably been asked before. If you were to play the show, how do you think you would go? Do you think you would do all right on it?
Oh, God. It's a good question, actually, because it's a bit of it's luck, I suppose, sometimes, as you know.
Yep.
As cameramen, we're quite good at manipulating people. So I reckon I'd go okay. People have told me I'd go okay.
Well, you'd know where they find all the idols now and everything, right? So you'd have a bit of background information. Yes and
no, mate. That's just like a lot of there's so many times you film an idol being found and you cannot believe. Like there'll be an idol hidden and they'll walk past it 50 times and then some person will just go, oh, there's an idol. So, I think I'd go right because my philosophy in life is you don't have to like people. You just have to make them think that you like them. So that's kind of my attitude that I would go into it with. You'd be friends with everybody. You'd fly under the radar and I don't know. But does that work? I don't know.
I love that attitude. That's a great attitude to have. I might have to adopt
that's what I would do.
Yeah.
You'd sit low to start with, and then. But David Janae, he was amazing at that. I mean, the number one rule for Survivor is, and this is what I would tell anybody who was going to play the game is, you get to know everybody in the tribes, everybody. You talk about their favourite subject, which is themselves. Okay, so what's your favourite subject? Yourself.
Yeah.
So you get to know everybody, and it's not rocket science. You look at David Janae, look what he did. That's what he did. He got to know everybody intimately and manipulated them.
Well, you are similar to Dave because, of course, he's a fellow inductee this year, Matt.
Well,
so look at you two being
one of my favourites ever.
Together.
He's my favourites ever.
It works quite well. Matt, as I said, it's an honour to be able to chat to you today, to be able to induct you into the Hall of Fame and have this little catch-up. We do have a couple of goodies that we will send out to you as part of celebrating your time on the show and being part of the franchise in Australia. But on behalf of myself, the expert panel, congratulations on your career in Survivor. We look forward to seeing everything else that you're going to be filming moving forward, of course, with Heroes vs. Villains just around the corner as well, seeing how that season will turn out. But pleasure to...
Mate, it's a ripper.
It's a ripper. Get excited for it. Okay. Yes.
I'll tell you a little sneak.
Please do.
I saw the EP not so long ago, and she said, this is probably, and Amelia Fisk is the EP in charge, she said, this is probably my favourite first two episodes I've ever had. Right. And she's done a lot of them. She's done a lot.
All right.
So it is amazing. The new one is amazing.
That's the tease I like to hear. I like to hear that. You've ended this on an absolute treat. Matt, pleasure to have you here today to learn about your time on the show and to celebrate your time on Australian Survivor. So thank you very much.
Thank you, mate. I really appreciate it.